The dust hadn't even settled when Marcus Hartwell heard the infant's cry cut through the evening air like a blade through silence. He'd been checking the fence line near the main road when the wagon rolled past. 3 men in black coats, their faces hard as winter stone. What made him freeze wasn't the sight of them throwing something into the dirt. It was the way they kept riding without looking back. The bundle in the road writhed and wailed, tiny fists punching at the gathering dusk. A baby no more than a few months old, wrapped in what had once been a clean blanket, but it wasn't alone. Crumpled beside it, a young woman struggled to her knees, her dark hair matted with blood, her dress torn at the shoulder. She reached for the child with shaking hands, and Marcus saw the desperation in her movements, the kind that came from having everything stripped away in a single brutal moment. "Ma'am," his boots crunched on the gravel as he approached, hands raised to show he meant no harm. She flinched anyway, protecting the baby with her body like a shield made of broken ribs and fierce love. "Please," she whispered, and the word carried the weight of 1,000 prayers. "Don't let them." Her voice cracked, and she swayed on her knees. Marcus had seen enough. He scooped up the infant first, feeling the surprising weight of new life against his chest, then helped the woman to her feet. She was younger than he'd thought, maybe 20, with the kind of beauty that made men do terrible things and other men try to stop them. "Can you walk?" he asked. She nodded, though her legs trembled like new grass in a storm. "They said I was nothing, said he was nothing." She touched the baby's head with fingers that shook, said we had no place in their world. Marcus looked down the empty road where dust still hung in the air like a question mark. His ranch house sat a half-mile back, windows glowing amber in the fading light. He'd built that place for a family he'd never had, rooms that echoed with nothing but his own footsteps for 7 years running. "What's your name?" he asked. "Elena." The name came out soft as a prayer. "Well, Elena." Marcus adjusted the baby in his arms, feeling something shift inside his chest, something that had been locked away since the fever took his own wife and unborn child. "Looks like you're both coming home with me." But as they started toward the house, he caught the glint of metal in the distance. Riders, coming back. The kitchen lamp cast long shadows across Elena's face as she fed the baby with careful, practiced movements. Marcus had found goat's milk in the cellar, watched her mix it with water warmed over the stove. She hadn't spoken much since they'd reached the house, but her eyes never stopped moving, to the windows, the door, back to the child in her arms. "They'll come back," she said finally, breaking the silence that had stretched between them like a taut wire. "Men like that don't forget." Marcus poured coffee from the pot that had been brewing since sundown, the bitter smell mixing with the scent of wood smoke and something else, fear maybe, or the metallic taste that came before storms. "Tell me about them." Elena's laugh held no humor. "My husband worked for them. Did their books, kept their secrets." She shifted the baby to her shoulder, rubbing small circles on his back. "When he found out what they were really moving through those ledgers, not just cattle but people, Marcus. Families torn apart, sold like livestock. He tried to stop it. Tried. They killed him 3 days ago." The words dropped into the room like stones into still water. "Made me watch, said I had information they needed, names of other men who might cause trouble." She looked up, and Marcus saw steel beneath the exhaustion. "I told them nothing." The baby made a soft sound, and Elena's expression gentled. "This is Samuel. He's all I have left of David." Her voice broke on her husband's name. "Those men, they said a half-breed child and his widow had no right to property, no right to inheritance. Said they'd make sure we disappeared completely." Marcus understood now. He'd heard whispers about the Clemson operation, men who dealt in human cargo, who used legitimate businesses to hide something uglier. Elena's husband had been Apache, which made their child a target in more ways than one. "There's a mission in Santa Fe," Elena continued. "Sisters who take in women like me, children like Samuel. If I could just know." The word came out harder than Marcus intended. He set down his coffee cup, the sound sharp in the quiet kitchen. "You're not running anymore. You don't understand. They have the law in their pocket, half the town council. If you help us, they'll destroy you too. Let them try." Marcus moved to the window, pulled back the curtain. 3 riders sat their horses at the edge of his property line, just visible in the moonlight, waiting. I've been alone in this house for 7 years, Elena. 7 years of wondering what I was building it for, what I was working toward. He turned back to her. Maybe I was building it for this moment. Marcus, they threw you in the dirt like garbage, both of you. His voice carried the weight of every lonely night, every empty room. Well, you're not garbage, and this is my land. The riders outside began moving closer, their horses' hooves a steady drumbeat against the earth. The knock came at midnight, deliberate and commanding. Not a request, a demand. Marcus had been expecting it, sitting in his chair by the fireplace with his Winchester across his knees, listening to Elena sing softly to Samuel in the back bedroom. The sound had been the only thing keeping his nerves steady, as shadows moved past the windows like predators circling wounded prey. Marcus Hartwell, the voice carried the authority of a man used to being obeyed. We know you're in there. We know what you're harboring. Marcus rose slowly, the floorboards creaking under his boots. Through the curtain, he could see torches, at least 6 men on horseback, their faces hidden beneath hat brims and bandanas. The leader sat slightly apart from the others, his coat expensive, his horse well-bred. This wasn't some group of drifters, this was money, this was power. Open the door, Hartwell. We just want the woman and the child. No one else needs to get hurt. From the bedroom came the faint sound of Elena whispering prayers in Spanish, her voice barely audible above Samuel's soft breathing. Marcus thought of the way she'd looked when he'd first seen her, broken, desperate, protecting her son with nothing but love and determination. He thought of his own wife buried on the hill behind the house, and the child they'd never had a chance to hold. There's no woman here, Marcus called back, his voice steady. No child either, just me and my business which doesn't concern you. A different voice now, younger, uglier. Don't play games, rancher. We followed their tracks right to your door. The Apache whore and her bastard belong to us. Something cold and dangerous settled in Marcus's chest. He'd fought in the war, seen what men could do to each other when they forgot their humanity, but this was different. This was his home, his choice. Only thing that belongs to you, Marcus said, loud enough for all of them to hear, is the road off my property. I suggest you use it. The leader's laugh was like gravel in a tin cup. We represent the Clemson Trading Company, Mr. Hartwell. We have legal claim to the woman and child as assets of our deceased employee. You're interfering with lawful business. Lawful. Marcus moved closer to the door, his finger finding the Winchester's trigger. Throwing a baby in the dirt is lawful now. That child and his mother are stolen property. We have documentation. I have documentation too. Marcus pulled back the rifle's hammer. The click loud in the sudden silence. Says this is my land, and I decide who stays and who goes. The torches shifted, horses stamping nervously. These men had expected compliance, not resistance, but Marcus could see the calculation in their leader's posture, the way he gestured to his men. They hadn't come this far to leave empty-handed. Last chance, Hartwell, open the door, or we'll open it for you. From somewhere in the darkness beyond the torches came the sound of more hoofbeats, but these were different, steady, measured, coming from the direction of town. The riders heard it too, their heads turning, uncertainty creeping into their formation. Marcus allowed himself a tight smile. Sometimes the cavalry really did arrive. The approaching hoofbeats belonged to Sheriff Tom McKenna and 2 deputies, their badges catching the torchlight as they rode into the circle of mounted men. Marcus had known Tom for 15 years. They'd served together, built their lives in the same territory, shared whiskey and stories when the loneliness got too heavy. But he'd never been happier to see his old friend than he was right now. Gentlemen, McKenna's voice cut through the tension like a calm blade. Mighty late for a social call, the Clemson leader straightened in his saddle. Sheriff, we're conducting lawful business. This man is harboring stolen property. McKenna's tone went flat. Last I checked, people weren't property anymore. Thought we settled that particular question a few years back. While the men argued outside, Marcus heard soft footsteps behind him. Elena had emerged from the bedroom, Samuel sleeping against her shoulder. In the lamplight, she looked fragile as spun glass, but her eyes held the same steel Marcus had seen in the kitchen. "Let me go to them," she whispered. "This isn't your fight." "The hell it isn't." Marcus kept his rifle trained on the door. "You think I'd let them drag you out of here after what I've seen, after what you've told me? But your friend, the sheriff, what if they have legal papers? What if—" "Elena," Marcus turned slightly, meeting her gaze. "7 years ago I lost everything that mattered to me. Fever took my wife and the child she was carrying. I built this house for a family I'd never have, worked this land for people who'd never come home to it." He paused, listening to McKenna's voice growing sharper outside. "Then tonight I found you and Samuel thrown away like trash, and something in me said no more." Elena's eyes glistened. "Marcus, I'm not letting them take you, either of you, not because I'm trying to replace what I lost, but because this feels right. For the first time in 7 years this house feels like a home." Outside, McKenna's voice rose. "I don't see any legal papers, gentlemen. What I see is 6 armed men threatening a citizen on his own property in the middle of the night." Elena moved closer to Marcus, close enough that he could smell the faint scent of sage in her hair, could hear Samuel's tiny peaceful breaths. "My husband used to say that family isn't just blood," she said softly. "It's the people who stand with you when everything else falls apart. Smart man, he would have liked you." She reached out, her fingers brushing his arm. "He would have said you have a good heart." Through the window, Marcus could see the Clemson men reluctantly backing their horses away from the house. McKenna had won this round, but Marcus knew it wasn't over. Men like that didn't give up easily. "Elena," he said, making a decision that felt as natural as breathing, "when this is finished, really finished, I want you and Samuel to stay, not as refugees, not as people I'm protecting, as family." She was quiet for a long moment, studying his face in the amber light. "Are you sure? Once you say something like that, I'm sure." Outside, the hoofbeats were fading, but Marcus kept his rifle ready. "Question is, are you?" Elena shifted Samuel to her other arm, then reached up and touched Marcus's cheek. Her palm was warm, calloused from work, real as the sunrise he prayed they'd all live to see. "Yes," she whispered. "We're sure." Dawn came slowly, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold that reflected off the dew-covered grass around the ranch house. Marcus had dozed fitfully in his chair, rifle across his knees, while Elena slept curled on the couch with Samuel nestled against her heart. The night had passed without further incident, but he knew the Clemson men were still out there, waiting, planning. Sheriff McKenna arrived with the sunrise, dismounting stiffly from his horse and accepting the coffee Marcus offered with grateful hands. "Found something interesting in town last night," he said, pulling a leather portfolio from his saddlebag. "Seems Mr. Clemson's operation wasn't as legal as he claimed. The documents told a story of forgery, kidnapping, and human trafficking that stretched across 3 territories. Elena's husband hadn't just kept their books, he'd been gathering evidence, building a case that would have brought down the entire organization. David hid copies of everything," Elena explained, bouncing Samuel gently as he fussed in the morning light. "In our house, in the bank, even with the mission sisters in Santa Fe. He knew they'd kill him eventually, but he wanted to make sure his death wouldn't be meaningless." "It won't be," McKenna assured her. "Federal marshals are already moving on this. The Clemson operation is finished." By noon, the last of the Clemson riders had been arrested, their leader facing charges that would keep him locked away for the rest of his natural life. But for Marcus, the real victory was quieter, more personal. It was the sound of Elena humming as she prepared lunch in his kitchen. It was Samuel's tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb. It was the way the house finally felt alive. 2 weeks later, Father Miguel arrived from Santa Fe to perform a ceremony in the small chapel Marcus had built years earlier for a wedding that never happened. Elena wore a simple white dress she'd sewn herself, wildflowers in her dark hair. Samuel, now a month older and thriving, slept peacefully in the arms of Sheriff McKenna's wife, who'd become Elena's closest friend. "Do you take this woman?" Father Miguel asked, his voice carrying across the small gathering of neighbors and friends, to be your lawfully wedded wife, to love and protect in sickness and health, for as long as you both shall live. Marcus looked at Elena, remembering the moment he'd first seen her in the road, broken but unbeaten, protecting her child with fierce love. "I do," he said, meaning it with every fiber of his being. "And do you take this man to be your husband, to honor and cherish, through all the days of your life?" Elena's smile was brighter than the New Mexico sun. "I do, and Samuel does too." The kiss was gentle, full of promise and new beginnings. As they broke apart, Marcus heard something he'd been waiting 7 years to hear, the sound of a child's laughter echoing through his home. Years later, when Samuel was old enough to understand, Elena would tell him the story of the night they found their family, how 3 cruel men had thrown them away like garbage, but one good man had picked them up and said the words that changed everything: "Both are mine now." She'd tell him about courage and kindness, about the difference between what's legal and what's right, and about how sometimes family finds you in the most unexpected places. But that night, as Marcus carried his sleeping son to bed while Elena waited for him in their room, he didn't think about the future or the past. He thought about the weight of the child in his arms, solid, real, his, and the woman who'd made his house a home. Outside, the New Mexico wind whispered through the sage, carrying with it the promise of tomorrow and all the tomorrows after that. The last thing he saw before sleep took him was Elena's face on the pillow beside his, peaceful at last, and he knew that some things were worth fighting for, some things were worth everything.